they could eavesdrop on the transmissions. So, but unfortunately, they ran out of money, and they couldn't buy new good pagers, and thus they just used the old network that did have encryption, but only optionally, and that wasn't implemented widely. So they got one of the old pagers and got told, well, you know, just start the digital service. The emergency services do get a transmission about where they're going and what's happening there. And some people, this data can also be used for other kinds of information. For example, 2533 is the code for drug abuse.
For cocaine poisoning. And we can argue as to whether the party's just beginning or if it's already finished at that point. But there are fetishes for such parties. We need to hurry up a bit. In India, India is becoming one of the surveillance capitals of the world, trying to survey over 1.1 billion citizens, building surveillance systems of lots of different sorts. What can go wrong with such a thing? And now the UK is introducing its own cybersecurity strategy. It's even been published. You can find the PDF in the internet. Have fun reading it. And they've imprisoned the first people this year, and not last year or the year before, for refusing to give out their passphrases. The law was changed, they claim, 6 years ago. That's actually not true. It's the RIP Act, RIPA, and that when one doesn't give out one's password, one can end up in prison. So be careful when traveling to England. The next category. The next category, we weren't sure whether simply to carry on with e-government, but these categories could have come under the same category. Next year, they're not going to be. Next year, they're not going to be separated from one another. This category is about data crime. So we've got the examples of telecom, the railways, and the post office here in Germany, all well-known brands whose means of dealing with data are thoroughly trusted, absolutely wonderful. And we'd like to see some applause for the employees of the Postbank who phoned the Consumer Association in Germany and read them their statement over the previous weeks. Because as long as we don't have the necessary regulation, namely that the CEO needs to be imprisoned if there's a problem, that is to say personal liability for data crimes, for misuse of data. While we don't have that, this is what we're going to do. And so a round of applause for the employee who did this. And this would only happen if we're in a position to be able really to get off our asses, according to which the CEOs personally would be liable for such crimes. There are other areas in which this is true and which this is the case, and it would be great if it were also the case in terms of data crime.
Question from the audience. Of course, the Post Service is involved in this somehow as well. They are playing with data, don't they? Aren't they? They were sending out an ad letter, ask us which advertisements you want, and we'll make sure you get them. And allegedly, the addresses will not be given out. You do know, of course, that we are reliable, sent this letter, and that was kind of funny. Fantastic fail. they probably thought if Google does personalized ads, that's what we should do as well. So until then, we rely on people with civil courage calling someone somewhere. The second demand we have is the data letter. We would like every company, every state institution to tell everyone whom they have data about, to tell them what data they have and who they pass that data on to. And in the case of we've given those to the US, we'd rather have a list of the actual services that they receive the data. An international data letter has just been suggested from the audience. Yes, that is what we need these days, isn't it? Yes, probably right. Well, it seems probably freedom of information is a tool to get further than that. And further than in the US, gets you further than actually trying to get the data from a German bank here. Flight passenger data and SWIFT data sharing across borders does mean that we probably need this letter internationally. Can someone pass the mic to Volker? Supposedly someone in the audience.
Ja, zum Thema Epic Fail.
About epic fail, flight passenger data leads me to an anecdote that happened to a personal friend of mine. I don't want to mention his name here, but he has an exotic name such as Helmut Müller, a very regular German name, in fact. This Helmut Müller was mentioned to the authorities, and the Spanish police tried to find him. Didn't find him where he was registered, which led to him being searched with an international arrest warrant. And I should mention also, this is about a small fraud case. He was searched with an international arrest warrant, and which is funny also because at that time he was being searched across 3 years. He traveled across Europe, from Spain to Switzerland, Germany, Austria, and so on, by plane all the time. This is a true story. Now, in the end, the international arrest warrant made sure that this Helmut Müller was searched in Germany as well. He has a German-sounding name, and the police in Hamburg thought that they might just arrest the Helmut Müller they found there, found someone of the same name. This is really true. They entered his flat, his apartment, and got him out in front of his neighbors with some kind of SWAT team, I presume. He was arrested. Unfortunately, the wrong Helmut Müller, or fortunately, as the case may be. My friend still didn't know anything about this, but he got wind of this because his parents, who were living there as well, did, after many years, get a visit from the police, asking, well, do you perhaps know where your son is? Of course we know, they said. And the reason they hadn't found him was that the name contained an umlaut, a letter with a diaeresis that doesn't occur in international alphabets.
Little Bobby Tables.
Conclusion. Until we have the data letter and personal liability by CEOs, it's obviously necessary that we need an emergency defense, digital emergency defense. So let us state again, it is completely legitimate to add data about yourself, false data about yourself to databases. You can assume that this data will get lost, and the data that you will enter will get lost. So imagine what you want to see about yourself in those databases at the time it gets lost. Just the good things, but not too good. Remember that. Of course, we also had the voting machine massacre, a nice pre-announced event, an election that was against the constitution but still valid. This is the 2005 federal election that had a regulation about excess mandates, which is not fully compatible with the constitution.
Well, we are waiting because DeWalt just got rid of the production of those